Steve, always so good to see you. I have to tell you, it was really weird to see Xi Jinping in Moscow with Vladimir Putin walking together while you have all of the soldiers and the military equipment out. You know, they did this. I don't know. It's a thing that tyrants do. They always like to go out and look at their military equipment. It just was really unsettling. And I wanted to start off with, right at I guess it was at the start of the expansion of their invasion in Ukraine, whenever they have their little Red Square parade, China didn't send any dignitaries. But now Xi Jinping is over in Moscow. Why is there such a big difference between it seemed like they were just ostracizing Moscow, and now, you have the head of the CCP there.
Yeah, well, China, especially Xi Jinping, has been playing both sides of this from the get-go. But he's also made very, very clear when push comes to shove, which side does he lean towards? He's said that Vladimir Putin is his very good friend. Not a lot of people in the world say Vlad is their very good friend. He says that they have an unlimited partnership. Well, why? That's really pretty broad commitment to one side here. He's floated this idea of some kind of a peace plan to bring the war to a halt and to stand up for international sovereignty, without ever saying, how do you draw the sovereign boundaries of Ukraine now? They were violated in 2014 by Russia. No one, not even our dear president, has said what the end point is in this. Is it back to those borders? Is it back to the borders before this recent escalation? But right now, you have these two tyrants, one of whom has been convicted supposedly of crimes before the International Criminal Court, and the other one has committed genocide against the Muslim majority in his country. And basically they're saying they're sanction proofing themselves and their economies, and they're ignoring all of the huff and puff of the West, and they're going about their business. And they're basically saying there's nothing you guys are going to be able to do about this. And it's not that I am chomping at the bit to fight either one of these big powers, but we have a White House that is sitting back like it's a color commentary. We're going to keep the channels of communication open. Having your phone available to be answered is not saying, what are you planning to do? Or what is the outcome you seek? You'd think after a year in, they'd have at least that.
And they don't. And I'm sure that some of the discussion is going to be strengthening their energy agreement that they have, because China gets a lot of Russian fuel. They get Russian gas. They get quite a bit of it.
I bet it's a good deal. China has a lot of material to provide Russia so that they don't have to try to engage in trades on markets where people have been trying to block them or attach penalties and sanctions to them. So, yes, you have this sort of parallel that is out there emerging of countries that are not interested in what the moral preening of our postmodern leaders are in Europe or the United States or Canada elsewhere. They're just doing what they're doing, and they're saying, you can't affect us. We look at China. So President Biden says we want to keep the channels of communication open. But it's also keeping trade open, still keeping us dependent on all kinds of things coming from China. We haven't adjusted policy one bit since the Biden administration has come into office. They've threatened Taiwan. They've crushed Hong Kong. They've got this genocide in the Northwest. And now they're saying maybe we'll give some military material to Russia, which was supposed to be a red line.
Yeah, that was supposed to be a red line. That's a good reminder. Stephen Yates is joining us at YatesComs on Twitter, foreign policy expert. It. Correct me if I'm wrong on this. I read somewhere, and I was actually trying to find it, and I can't pull it up. It is more advantageous for China, for Russia to be involved in Ukraine. So why would they Why would they even want to broker any kind of peace agreement?
Well, I think first and foremost, Xi Jinping, people have to remember, has a third grade education. We're not dealing with a Phi Beta Kappa here. He's a pretty crude, rude, bully kind of guy. And he sees an opening. He can look like he's the power guy. He's the boss that comes in and says, brings the five families to the table because the baddest of the bad has shown up and everyone's got to come and talk. So he's going to try to play that routine of they're out there making peace. China's just all about making peace and prosperity out in the world. And it's the bad West that wants to declare these wars. And I wish some of our people in our politics wouldn't feed that notion, right. But that's what they're trying to play. And why would they want to do that? Well, when time comes when they want to say, hit Taiwan or hit Japan or hit us, they'll have all of this B-roll out there where it'll be harder to say, well, these guys are warmongers and bad and all that. They would have made deals in the Middle East. They would have made deals with Russia. They would have made deals with a lot of the global South, as we call it, Latin America and Africa. That's a lot of votes in the UN to the extent anyone pays attention to that anymore. But it helps with their softening the international space for when they want to do something truly bad to challenge us.
Yeah, and you mentioned too some of the politicians you wish they wouldn't feed that narrative. Ron DeSantis last week had said that the issue with Ukraine was it's really over a territorial dispute, which sparked an outcry of a certain amount of Republicans. Amongst them, I mean, they're kind of the ones you would expect, but amongst them, declared candidate Nikki Haley as well, who was arguing otherwise. I mean, if it's something more than a territorial dispute, then what is it?
Well, I think that's a fair question. Look, I'll say just because there seems to be an army of Twitter weirdos that want to just overanalyze everything someone says. But if I take at face value what Governor DeSantis said, and you want to disagree, then you actually are, as you were implying, on the hook to say, well, fill in the blank then. If it isn't a territorial dispute, what is it? I have very good friends that I love and respect that say this is a battle between good and evil. And so, well, that's a pretty big deal. I want to be for good. I'm not for evil. But if it's all that, then why aren't we guns a-blazing, invading, and making it our war? I don't want that, but I didn't say it was good versus evil. And so all these people are out there morally preening about which way it goes. But the truth of the matter is, for me, as we've said many, many times, my threshold issue is this is not our fight if Europe is going to stay on the sidelines and underperform. It is a form of kind of solidifying welfare for a very overly educated, overly wealthy elite in Europe that wants to continue to do business with Russia and have Uncle Sam pay for everything. And so they've got the money, they've got the material, they should pick it up. If this is good versus evil, then why is Europe having a pass? If anything, our president and his representatives should be bending the ears of Europe to say, get in and do more. And if you don't, well, then you're going to have to deal with bad Vlad.
Who was it that was trying to make the analogy that we can't have a church, or not Churchillian, but a Chamberlain-like response? You mentioned Europe, and it got me to thinking of that. And I'm like, this is nowhere near what that was, because Europe was pretty involved with regards to Germany at that point. I mean, to say that this is, that any denial or refusal to get involved or to characterize it as a territorial dispute is a Chamberlain-esque comment. To me, I don't think that really works as a comparison.
Well, I also just have a deep allergy for this Europe first mindset.
Right.
I mean, good grief. I thought that the most of the liberal world was against the philosophies and the importance of the history of old white men. But I mean, if you really want to talk about where is this big threat coming from the world, what is really good versus evil, if you aren't stepping up to the China challenge, then I've got no time for you, because Russia can't put a glove on what China's already doing to us and others. So if you're this big, tough guy wanting to walk around and say, this is our fight, and we're going to be just like these historic figures, then show me the money. What are you doing with this Asia challenge that's spreading all around the world? And if it's crickets and all you do is write cool articles about it, but you don't have any big ideas about what to do, then this Europe stuff, come on, you guys sort this stuff out, step up if it's this big. I respect that sovereignty is at stake. I believe in that. I think our sovereignty matters, but there's other parts of the world that are bigger and more important on this. Now, people can slam me for that, but I just think it's a simple business. You look at the world, we can only do so much. Here's a place that has a major threat coming to the Communist Party of China. If they want to team up with Russia, that's a big deal. But okay, Europe, then you should be doing more on your flank.
Exactly. And that leads right into my last question for you, talking with our friend Stephen Yates. Russia, no matter how it's presented by cable news or anybody else, I mean, this is a waning power. Their peak is gone. They have sunset. I mean, are they influential? To an extent. Do they have some power? Well, sure, in terms of energy and that, but even that's really kind of limited at this point. And I agree with you that China is the big threat. But is that why there's this insane focus on Russia? Because we just don't, and by we, I mean the administration and certain people in D.C. don't either want to, because there's an absence of political will, or an absence of really know-how with where to even start to deal with China.
Oh, the China challenge is huge, and that is daunting. And the easiest thing in government to do is to just blather on about communication channels and meetings, because then you don't have to do any real work or take any real risk. And even weak powers, I mean, guys in caves in Nowhereville took down the towers in New York and hit the Pentagon. So, I mean, it's not to say that that a declining Russia can't hit us, can't hurt us. Of course they can. But that's why we should be investing in our military, be prepared to defend ourselves. But we can't stay prisoner to the old alliances in the old world and keep thinking that the old historical figures are going to define our times. We're going to have to adjust to what we see now. And the China challenge is big, but I think that they're also bought off. We have a ton of vested interests all around business, all around politics, all around government that are bought off on China. And so they're not going to say, hey, we should hit them. They're good with the Russia, because this is the guy in the country we can demonize and it doesn't cost us.
Yeah, I lied. This is my last question. The Bidens. I mean, they've made money with the CCP. How is that not a NatSec issue?
Well, I mean, this is another one for someone who's lived a life like mine. I got raked over the coals at one point in my career just for having someone who was a reporter but wasn't really a reporter come to my family for the 4th of July, where my youngest uncle recited the Declaration of Independence to the face of my granddad's British cousins. And they thought that this embassy guy from China was cultivating me. I was a private citizen. I didn't know where he came from. They're raking me over for a guy that I was putting independence in his face. And so if I'd have taken money, if I'd have had multiple family members take money, if I was in office while my family was making money with that, all of these would be terminal offenses. And I have no way to even conceive of how this doesn't even raise the voice or the even intellectual curiosity of the media.
Yeah, that's the $1 million question. We'll see. Maybe this, the oversight committee, we'll find out who that fourth Biden is. I got some ideas. Maybe we'll see. Stephen Yates.
That would be awesome.
Oh, yeah. At YatesComs on Twitter. Always so good to see you. Thanks so much for your time.